Hello guys and welcome back to another video. I could tell that you all really loved the Philippines vlogs and now I am back with a total guide of what I think you should know before traveling to the Philippines. First off, here's some general facts about the country that make it a very interesting country. First of all, the Philippines is the second biggest archipelago in the world, meaning it consists out of many islands, more than 7,000 to be correct. The country is positioned on the western edge of the Pacific Ocean, right where the two tectonic plates meet and create the Ring of Fire. Because of this, the Philippines is home to 3,000 volcanoes, of which 24 remain active today. Another interesting geological fact is that the Wallace Line, which is an imaginary border that splits up species of Asia and Australia, runs right through the archipelago, meaning that there are very unique species on Palawan that will not be there on the other islands of the archipelago, creating a very biodiverse country. Now let's have a look at when is the best time to go to the Philippines. The best time is generally between January and April, when it is the sunniest, driest time of the year, but the east of the country, like Palawan, is already dry from November. Anything before that, especially July and August, are the wettest months and the monsoon season. Even right before I arrived in November, the Philippines was hit by not one, not two, but 4 monsoons in a row. And it really has a big impact on the country, but also on the coral reefs, which is something I didn't realize before. The coolest months are December, January, and February, when the temperature is nice to do some more active activities. If you are very much into surfing, then Siargao sees the best waves already in August. In November, it was still very rainy as well when I was in Siargao, so do keep that in mind that the east will be drier first, whilst it is still very much the rainy season in other parts of the country. Because the Philippines has this many islands and also different seasons for those islands, it can be quite difficult to decide where you are going and how you will plan your itinerary. Personally, when I started planning, I just looked at all the flights and I kind of based my itinerary off of the cheapest flights. When making my itinerary, I knew I wanted to go to Palawan, Siargao, and the more central islands like Siquijor, Bohol, and Cebu. The central islands you can easily do without too many internal flights. You can easily take buses and take ferries, which will help you avoid taking any flights. However, Siargao, which is all the way on the east of the country, and Palawan, which is on the west, you will most definitely need to fly into unless you take a very long overnight or multiple day ferry. Since I didn't have that much time, I only had 1 month to spend in the Philippines. I flew from and to these two places in the Philippines. I flew from Manila to Coron, then I flew from Puerto Princesa all the way to Siargao. From Siargao, I then flew to Cebu, and then the only flight I still had to take was back from Bohol to the capital of Manila. I decided not to spend any time in Manila simply because I haven't really heard anyone say that great things about it. Also, the same goes for Cebu. I pretty much landed and got out of there as soon as I could. Also, Manila. When you arrive in Manila, the two terminals, the international and the domestic, are located quite far away from each other, and there is not really a good connection between both of them. There is a bus that connects the two, but it goes like once every half an hour or once every hour. So if you are a bit short on time to make it to your connection, often this will not be an option for you. Arriving in the Philippines, I didn't have time, or I couldn't really get a SIM card there right away. This is where an eSIM comes in handy because you can pretty much use it as soon as you land, but it also often is much more expensive. So I didn't get an eSIM beforehand, and I landed without having a SIM, so I couldn't order a taxi like through an app like Grab. meaning that I had to go straight to the actual taxis that are there, and they are the actual mafia. They charged me 30 euros to go from one terminal to another, which is a 10-minute ride, but it was the only way for me to make it to my connecting flight, so I had to pay it. But knowing that that is probably 10 times the amount that you would pay for a Grab or whatever, it's just, yeah, I felt so ripped off as soon as I landed in the Philippines. So definitely take this into account when you are traveling through the Manila airport. International flights and domestic flights really are not even in the same place. So from Manila, I flew straight to Coron. The good thing about when you arrive in a new place is that usually at the airports there are shared vans that will take you to your accommodation. Grab usually is not a thing except for in Cebu or maybe Manila, but other than that, you will have to hustle for your transportation prices. Anyway, but usually there are shared vans at the airports that you arrive that will take you to the most popular touristy destinations, and you can share the cost. Then from Coron, I did the island hopping expedition all the way to El Nido. And then from El Nido, I took a transfer all the way down to Puerto Princesa, from where I was flying to Siargao. After spending time on Siargao, I then flew to Cebu. And from Cebu, this was a hell of a travel day to make to Malapascua. When it comes to these travel days, you can see everything in detail in the vlogs that I made separately. So if you want to see how to get from Siargao to Malapascua or just to Malapascua from Cebu, definitely check out the vlogs separately. Finally, I made it to Malapascua, and then after that, I made my way back down to Mualboal, which is still on the island of Cebu. From there, I had to take a few ferries to get to Siquijor, and from Siquijor, I took a ferry to Bohol, from where I then flew back to Manila and flew back to Belgium. So that was my itinerary. I looked into a few different airports to fly out of Palawan from, because there is an airport in El Nido, there is an airport in Puerto Princesa, which I decided to go for because it was the best and cheapest connection to get to Siargao. It's a bit of a puzzle with the internal flights. Let me get into the transportation a bit more in detail, because this will be your biggest challenge when traveling to the Philippines. Since it's islands and the country is so huge, like I said, you might have to take an internal flight. Now, they will get expensive the closer you get to date, so you kind of have to plan your itinerary beforehand, which I did not like because it gave me less freedom to leave a place once I felt like I was done with it. These flights also are not very reliable. Luckily, I was lucky. I flew with Cebu Pacific, I flew with AirAsia, and Philippines Airlines. Oh, another one I flew with was Sunlight Air, and all of them really got me to the place quite well. But so many other people I met had cancelled flights, delayed flights, meaning that they missed their connections. Obviously, as I told you, it's one of the most volcanic countries as well. So when a volcano erupts, it might also throw a spanner in the works, etc., etc. A friend of mine's airplane even went off of the runway, and then they had to pull them out and everything. It was a whole thing on Siargao. So the flights can be a bit iffy when it comes to reliability, but luckily it was okay for me. I just had quite a bit of a delay going from Siargao to Cebu, meaning that we barely made it to Malapascua in the same day. As I said, you can see all of that in the vlog. Aside from the shared vans that might be at the airport waiting for you, getting around a place, once you're there, you will most likely be taking the tricycles or the tuk-tuks. There might be some songtaos, which is the mode of transportation that we got in between ferry terminals, for example. These are pickup trucks that you can sit in the back of. They also use them back in Thailand, which is why I call them a songtao. That's probably not the right name for them in the Philippines, but it's the name I know to compare it to. Arriving in a new place and having to bargain for a decent price, knowing the prices you've paid in other islands and kind of comparing the distances versus price to then on another island. It was such a fight all the time to get a good price or just to get the normal price. It really took away from the excitement of arriving in a new place, because these tuk-tuks and tricycles, they ask for quite a bit of money. A big chunk of my budget, which I will get into in a little bit, has gone to transportation. Getting around was by far my least favorite thing in all of the Philippines, especially compared to the rest of Southeast Asia, where getting around is so easy. The one thing that I did enjoy was renting a scooter and driving around by myself. I did this on Bohol and on Siquijor, and it helped us so much to really explore and experience the best of the island. So I loved being able to rent a scooter and go around. On the bigger islands like Cebu, etc., there's also some long distance buses, which I only took from Cebu to Malboal, and they are really good as well. Okay, now that I've told you where I've gone, how I got around, already voiced some of my frustrations, here is what I spent on my trip to the Philippines, which I want to remind you that I spent 1 month in the Philippines, and usually in Southeast Asia you can travel for 1 month for about 1,000 euros. Now in the Philippines, that was not the case. I spent 2,127 euros for my month in the Philippines. Obviously, I took flights, which I usually don't take. The flight from Manila to Coron was 118 euros. The flight from Puerto Princesa to Siargao was 83 euros. The flight from Siargao back to Cebu was 51 euros. But then I had to pay another quite expensive, more than 30 euro taxi to get to Malapascua in the same day, which would have been cheaper with the minivans and bus, but I just wouldn't be able to make it otherwise. So that was another 84 euro travel day. And then my flight back from Bohol to Manila cost me 62 euros as well. My flight from Indonesia to the Philippines was 54 euros, and then my flight back home was obviously more expensive, was in the 400 euros. So both the flights and all the ferries and all the tricycles and minivans and expensive taxis. In total, I spent 19 euros a day on transportation on average. So that's everything added up and then divided by a month. 19 euros a day on transportation. Then for accommodation, I spent quite a bit less. The accommodation in hostels was actually an okay price. I paid 10 euros on average per night. Some places were more affordable, like the islands around Cebu, Malapascua, Siquijor, and then others like Palawan were a bit more expensive, but still below 15 euros a night. When it comes to food, the Philippines does not have a very rich cuisine like of themselves. They do have some local dishes, but it's not like in Thailand, where I just love to have Thai food every day, all day, and there's so much variety. That is not the case in the Philippines, meaning you quite often will have Western food and eat some more expensive food, which brings my total for food per day to 13 euros, which is quite a lot in Asian countries. And then, of course, the biggest chunk of my money went to activities, because usually I try to save money on accommodation and food so that I can do more exciting things on the destination. I did a lot of diving in the Philippines because, as I said before, I wasn't having the best time at first. But then I knew one thing would really make me happier, which was diving. I love to dive, and the Philippines is definitely an incredible country to go diving. If anything, I don't think I would go back to the Philippines if it were not for diving. I started out on Malapascua, where I did 2 days of diving, 1 day with the thresher sharks and the second day the Gato Island dives and the night dive with the mandarin fish. Together they were 180 euros for the 6 dives across 2 days. Then continuing on to Malboal, I paid 44 euros for the Kawasan canyoneering tour, which was more than worth it. That was one of my favorite days. The next day in Malboal, I did another 3 dives, which cost me 73 euros in total, which is not much at all when you consider the price per dive. Then I did a day trip to Apo Island from Siquijor. This one cost me 115 euros, also including 3 dives and obviously the whole day out on the boat and food, etc. And then on Bohol, I spent 14 euros driving to the Tarsier Sanctuary and waterfalls and so on, and doing the sub boarding also on the Lobok River. And another big cost of something I already mentioned as well was the expedition, the island hopping from Coron to Palawan, which cost me 100 euros per day, and I did 3 days. This can cost you a lot more if you go with the big companies like Tao, but I did mine with El Nido Paradise and I cannot recommend them enough. So that is where all the money went for my activities. Of course, here and there I visited a waterfall, I visited a healer, but those things were not that expensive at all. Oh, and the surfing for 2 hours on Siargao, I paid 26 euros as well. So the average per day that I spent on activities in the Philippines was 29 euros, bringing my total daily average to 65 euros a day. That is a lot. That is more than even the most expensive countries in Central America, like Costa Rica. But I knew I had to get more out of my activities because there was a lot that I just didn't enjoy. And I had to wait for my flight home, so I just made it worthwhile and spent a bit more on diving and doing nice activities. When it comes to paying for everything, most of it you will have to pay in cash. They are not fans of card payments there at all. And if they do allow you to pay with your card, there will be a 5% extra fee. To take out money at the ATMs, you also pay an extra 250 or 300 pesos each time you take out money. A great thing that helps you save money is the fact that most hostels and places you stay have a free water refilling station. So if you have your own water bottle, you can just top up and have water whenever you want for free. They also give you free water with your food. Another small extra cost pretty much every time you go to a new island is the eco fees. If you know what they do with them, please let me know, because to me it just feels like it's just a tourist tax that goes into the pockets of the people there. Whilst I was going on all the snorkeling trips, for example on Coron, the island hopping tour, and then the expedition, the snorkels are so bad. You cannot really dive down and then just blow out the water that's in the snorkel. They are really, really bad snorkels. So if you can just pay a few euros to buy yourself a good snorkel, I would highly recommend you doing this. And like I said, the Philippines wasn't my favorite country that I've been to. In fact, it's been one of my least favorites, even though I really tried my best in the end to make it worthwhile, and I went all out to just make the most of it. And I did end up having an amazing time on Bohol and Siquijor. But in general, I was really missing a mix of like cool cities. Like in Thailand, you have Bangkok, and then you have the north, which is mountainous and has beautiful nature, but you also have islands. Thailand is just so diverse, whereas I felt like in the Philippines, because it's mostly islands, you just end up on the beach everywhere anyways, and I'm the kind of person who gets really bored on beaches. I'm just a really active person, and after a few days on the boat island hopping, it was beautiful obviously, and I'm such a water person anyways, but somehow I just did not want to be on a beach anymore. After that first week pretty much, I needed a break from being in the water and seeing beaches, and I just wanted something different. I was also missing interactions with the local people. I felt like it wasn't very authentic. Oh, and don't get me started on the men, because I've never in my whole time of traveling around Asia felt uncomfortable because of the people. But in the Philippines, the men were constantly catcalling. Even in the hostels, usually like the people working in hostels are really nice, but every single one of the like hostel crew, especially like on Palawan where I was starting out my trip, they were all trying to hit on me and not giving me any peace or not leaving me alone. And the same thing just happened over and over again. The men catcalling and not leaving me alone, even to the point where if I was in a cafe eating something by myself, they would come in to talk to me. They would just not leave me alone. And I've not had this in Asia at all. Is it because it's a Christian country? And I don't have anything against Christianity because I'm a Christian myself. I was baptized. But compared to the Buddhist countries where I've only ever been respected as a woman, the contrast is very big. I did not feel comfortable walking by myself in the Philippines, especially on Malapascua. I had a really tough time because no matter where I went, the men would just kind of bother me. which kept me from seeing different parts of the island because I didn't want to go alone. So that made me very sad because I did not expect that. Also, there is quite a bit of animal cruelty and just animals not being treated very well. The Philippines is full of dogs and I love dogs so much, but the state that they are in, not all of them, some of them are really well taken care of, but others is just heartbreaking. Even on the remote islands that we went to with the island hopping tour, the dogs were just... Usually I would love that there's dogs there, but this time around it took away from the experience because it was just so sad. And then there's all the roosters. There are still a lot of rooster fights and all around the place are roosters. Like the one thing you will hear every single day is the rooster calling. They are everywhere. And when it comes to the marine life as well, the state that the reefs were in along these islands that see a lot of tourists was really sad. And it was better around Moalboal, but then the snorkel tours that go to the sardine run, they also see the turtles on top of the reef, and then there's just a huge group of people around one turtle stressing it out and just not respecting its space and getting too close to the marine life, stepping on the corals on top. And people are just not really educated on what they can or cannot do on these tours. Then obviously there's also a lot of people going to the Philippines to see the whale sharks, and don't even get me started on those. The way that they put tons of people in with these beautiful, enormous animals, like bumping into them and so on, feeding them also, which is not good for their natural feeding patterns, etc. That's another really nasty side of tourism, if you ask me. Traveling through the Philippines, it was not as easy and as fun as it was traveling around the rest of Southeast Asia. That does not mean that it's not an incredibly beautiful country, because it is naturally so beautiful with waterfalls, volcanoes, animals, rainforests, the islands, the turquoise blue ocean. It was really beautiful. So yeah, I've had a very mixed experience in the Philippines, both really beautiful, and I've met some really amazing friends along the way. But it also wasn't very nice in many ways. And that's the reality of traveling. Not every country is going to be as amazing as the previous one. And don't get me wrong, because a lot of people do have an incredible time when it comes to traveling around the Philippines. And they have the most amazing trip. But I just had a different experience, and that's okay. I know that I'm very spoiled, and 2 years ago I went to Central America and I was in the Caribbean, and there the reef was just in a much better state, and I kind of had a much more authentic experience with better local food, and I'm just very spoiled. And I do compare things, and compared to that, the Philippines was not as great. Which pains me to say, because the people, and especially the people watching my videos now, are so nice. And I have so many Filipino friends and I love them so much. But I just did not have the best time visiting their country. Please do let me know what I can do if I do go back to have a better experience. Or, how can I, or people watching this who still want to go on a trip, avoid these hurdles or just make the most of it. Definitely let me know in the comments below. I wish I could have gone to Camiguin. That's a small island just south of Bohol, which looks really beautiful as well. I think I would have loved it there too. I hope this video was useful for you and that it gave you a good expectation for what to expect when visiting the Philippines. I want to thank you all so much for watching the vlogs and supporting the channel. And if you haven't already, definitely subscribe, because up next is a big road trip through the Balkans here in Europe. So Montenegro, Bosnia, Croatia, Slovenia, and so much more. So definitely subscribe if you don't want to miss any of the next adventures. And then I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!